Hey, First Baptist Church, glad to meet you here this morning for our daily Bible reading. And today I want to be talking with you through Acts chapter 25. And it's just kind of fun reading through the book of Acts and just seeing the establishment of the church and everything that's going on. And in Acts 25, as we go through, just want to kind of give an overall of Acts real quick, as it kind of struck me as I was reading this, just remembering everything going on in Acts and how it starts in Acts, with going with Acts 1:8. And how we were told that we will be his witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. And then throughout the book of Acts, we see how that goes out as we go from being Jesus. We see Jesus as the Messiah to the Jews, all the way through to the Gentiles, and as missionaries go out to the Gentiles with Paul. So we start with Peter, we move to Paul, going all the way through, and we just see the gospel spread out in such a mighty way. But here in 25, we see this whole next step of when Paul is imprisoned and he's going through different things. He went to Jerusalem, they came after him, he was arrested. Obviously the Romans in things didn't want things to get too out of hand, because they had to report up the chain on what was going on. And so they took Jesus, and he gets sent to Caesarea, what was meant to be something for a convenience for the ruler to take him there to try him, actually turns into something that probably saves his lives, as the Jews were plotting to kill him. In fact, they said that they wouldn't eat until they did. And so all this getting all the way there, and now here they are in all these trials. Dakota yesterday morning kind of went through some of the different stuff. In all these trials, they can find nothing against Paul, and Paul doesn't crack. He knows he didn't do anything against the Jews. He didn't do anything against the Romans either. And so in this, Paul never cracks. But we have this coming down. And in verse 10, starting in chapter 25, I love this. As Paul is standing there on trial, he says, "But Paul said, I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you yourselves know very well. If then I am a wrongdoer and deserve anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar." Well, of course, saying that he was a Roman citizen was how Paul got handed over to the Romans at all, away from the Jews, going through all this. And the fact that they quit beating him was all because he said that he was a citizen and you have nothing against him. And so now here we are down to another trial where he goes through all this. The circumstances he found himself in were not something he went out and did something wrong. It was just that he was preaching the gospel, and he found himself here. And finally he says, "I appeal to Caesar." The thing that struck me with this is, I know that appeal to Caesar is what eventually led him all the way to Rome. And it's kind of interesting. During this time, with everything going crazy around us, and we see all these things spinning out of control around us, dictating things for us, a lot of us are having to spend a lot of time at home and away from friends. I think about Paul in this. I kind of see these two coming together. We see Paul in this. God's plan all along, we see played out through the book of Acts, is taking the message of the gospel from right there in Jerusalem and taking it to the uttermost parts of the earth. That's why we have Acts 1:8. And to see that spread rapidly, the life change, that here we are a couple of thousand years later, and we sit here as believers. Paul here has the ability, under Roman rule here in Israel, which was seen as a bad thing, to take the gospel all the way to Rome. And we know we're just a few short chapters away from that. And that's where we get this beautiful book of Romans that we'll be studying here in a couple of weeks as well. And so I want to just encourage you with this. What a lot of times we view as something meant to be bad, to restrict us or to do all kinds of things, is actually God's hand accomplishing his purpose. The Roman rule over Israel was seen as a bad thing in many ways. But as we know, the roads and everything that the Romans built as they came in actually served as the very conduit that the gospel went out to the nations. Actually served as the way that Paul was able to go on his missionary journeys and so many different things. It was that Roman occupation that did that. I don't know what's on the other side of this pandemic, but I know that God is working and walking us through all of this because he wants to accomplish purposes for his kingdom's sake. A lot like what we see here with Paul in chapter 25. I hope that you guys have a great day and look forward to continuing to watch these morning devotionals throughout this week.